It was a Tuesday afternoon when everything changed. Rachel had built her tech company from nothing, turning a simple app idea into a $12 million business. But right now, sitting in her car outside her own house, she felt like any other working mom rushing home early from a meeting that had ended sooner than expected. She grabbed her laptop bag and headed toward the front door, already thinking about dinner plans. The house was unusually quiet as she stepped inside. Usually, her 8-year-old son would be in the living room, either playing with his building blocks or watching his favorite cartoon about trains. Instead, she heard voices coming from the kitchen. Not just any voices, though. She heard her son speaking, which was rare enough. But there was something different about the way he sounded, more animated, more alive. Rachel set her bag down quietly and walked toward the kitchen, her heels making soft clicks on the marble floor. What she saw through the doorway made her stop breathing for a moment. Her son was sitting at the kitchen table with their housekeeper, and they were having what looked like a real conversation, not the usual one-word responses or head nods that had become normal in their house. He was actually talking, using his hands to gesture, his eyes bright with excitement. But here's what really shocked her. He wasn't speaking English. The words, flowing from his mouth, sounded musical, rhythmic. Then suddenly he switched to something that sounded completely different, sharper consonants rolling R's. Then again to something else entirely. Their housekeeper, a kind woman named Rosa, who had been with them for almost 2 years, was responding in each language, smiling and nodding encouragingly. She would say something, and he would repeat it back, but not like a parrot. He seemed to understand what he was saying. Rachel pressed herself against the wall, not wanting to interrupt whatever magic was happening in her kitchen. Her son, who struggled to ask for a glass of water in English, was speaking what sounded like 3 or 4 different languages. She watched as Rosa held up a red apple and said something in what Rachel thought might be Spanish. Her son immediately responded, not just naming the apple in that language, but apparently describing it. Rosa laughed and clapped her hands, then said something in a completely different language that sounded Asian. Again, he responded perfectly. Rachel felt her eyes getting watery. For 8 years, she had taken her son to speech therapists, autism specialists, and communication experts. Everyone told her the same thing. He would probably never have normal conversations. He might learn to communicate. Basic needs, but complex language was unlikely. Yet here he was, switching between languages like it was the most natural thing in the world. She thought about all the times she had felt helpless watching him struggle to express himself. The meltdowns when he couldn't tell her what was wrong. The frustration in his eyes when she couldn't understand what he needed. The well-meaning relatives who spoke too loudly and too slowly to him, assuming he couldn't understand anything. Now she was watching him have an animated discussion about fruits, colors, and what looked like family members in multiple languages she didn't even recognize. Rosa noticed her first. The older woman's face went pale when she saw Rachel standing in the doorway. She immediately started to stand up, probably expecting to be in trouble for overstepping some boundary. But Rachel couldn't move. She was transfixed by her son, who had now noticed her too but didn't stop talking. Instead, he looked at her and said something in one of the languages, pointing at Rosa with obvious excitement. Rosa translated quietly, her voice shaky with worry about Rachel's reaction. "He's telling you that I taught him how to say my friend in Tagalog. He says I'm his friend who speaks many words." Rachel walked into the kitchen slowly, like she was approaching something fragile that might disappear if she moved too quickly. She sat down at the table across from her son, who was still chattering away, now mixing languages in the same sentence. "How long has this been going on?" Rachel asked Rosa, her voice barely above a whisper. Rosa looked terrified. She twisted her hands in her apron and looked down at the table. "I'm so sorry, Mrs. Chen, I didn't mean to confuse him. It started by accident about 3 months ago. I was talking to my sister on video call, speaking our language from home. He came over and started making the same sounds. Perfect sounds. I thought maybe he just liked the way it sounded." She paused, glancing at the boy who was now quietly organizing the fruit on the table, while humming what sounded like a song in another language. Then he started copying everything. Not just sounds, but the meaning too. When I said kumusta to my sister, which means how are you in Tagalog, he would wave at the phone. When I said salamat, which means thank you, he would bow his little head like he understood. Rachel felt like she was hearing about a different child. Her son, understanding social cues, picking up on the meaning behind words instead of just memorizing sounds. I started teaching him small words during his snack time, Rosa continued. Just for fun. I never expected him to learn so quickly. Then my husband would call speaking Italian, and your son would listen and start repeating those words too. Then my neighbor, who helps me with my English, she speaks Mandarin with her daughter, and somehow he picked that up when they visited. Rachel looked at her son, who was now arranging the fruit by color while quietly counting in what she realized was probably Chinese. How many languages, she asked. Rosa's voice got even quieter. 9 different dialects, maybe more. He learns faster than my college students did when I was teaching back home. This hit Rachel like a brick. Rosa had been a teacher, and all the time she had worked for them, Rachel had never asked about her background beyond checking her references for housekeeping. Her son looked up at them both and said something that made Rosa smile. He wants to show you the song I taught him about family. It uses words from 4 different languages. Rachel nodded, not trusting herself to speak. Her son began singing softly, and even though she couldn't understand most of the words, she could hear the joy in his voice. This was the same child who had barely spoken 10 words in English last month. As he sang, Rachel found herself crying. Not sad tears, but overwhelming relief and something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. For so long she had focused on what he couldn't do. Couldn't speak normally. Couldn't make friends easily. Couldn't handle changes in routine. She had built her entire parenting approach around his limitations, but sitting in her kitchen, listening to her son sing a multilingual song about family while organizing fruit by color with the precision of a scientist, she realized she had been thinking about everything wrong. He didn't have a language problem. He had a language gift that no one had ever thought to look for. When the song ended, her son looked at her expectantly. Rosa translated his questioning look. He wants to know if you liked his song. Rachel reached across the table and took his small hand in hers. For once, he didn't pull away. It was the most beautiful song I've ever heard, she said, and meant every word. The next morning, Rachel couldn't stop thinking about what she had witnessed. She had barely slept, replaying the scene in her kitchen over and over. Her son singing in multiple languages, the joy on his face, the way Rosa had looked so scared when she realized she'd been caught. She decided to skip her morning meetings and stay home. She needed to understand what had been happening under her own roof for 3 months without her knowing. Rachel found Rosa in the laundry room, folding towels with the same careful attention she brought to everything. When Rosa saw her, she immediately started apologizing again. Mrs. Chen, I'm so sorry, I should have asked permission first. I was just trying to help him communicate better. I never meant to overstep. Rachel sat down on the small chair by the folding table. Rosa, I'm not upset with you. I'm confused, yes, but not upset. I need to understand how this happened. How did you know he could do this when none of his doctors ever mentioned it? Rosa's hands stilled on the towel she was holding. She looked thoughtful for a moment, like she was trying to figure out how to explain something complicated. Back home in the Philippines, I was a linguistics teacher for 15 years, she began. I taught at the university level. I studied how children learn languages, especially children who think differently. This was news to Rachel. She had hired Rosa through an agency, checked her background for any criminal history, and confirmed her previous housekeeping references. But she had never asked about her education or career before coming to America. When I came here 5 years ago, my credentials didn't transfer. I couldn't afford to go back to school to get certified again. So I started cleaning houses to pay the bills while my husband looked for work. Rosa sat down across from Rachel, still holding the towel. But I never stopped noticing things. Your son, he would watch me when I talked on the phone with my family. Not like other children who get bored and walk away. He would stand very still and listen to every sound. His eyes would move like he was trying to solve a puzzle. Rachel thought about this. Her son did have intense focus when something interested him. She had always assumed it was part of his autism, the way he could spend hours arranging his toy, cars in perfect lines or watching the same cartoon scene repeatedly. 3 months ago, my sister called while I was giving him his afternoon snack. She was upset about something, speaking very fast in Tagalog. Your son put down his crackers and came over to where I was sitting. He didn't interrupt, just listened. Rosa smiled at the memory. When I hung up, he looked at me and made sounds. Not random sounds, but the exact tones and rhythm my sister had used. It was like he had recorded her voice in his head and was playing it back. Rachel felt goosebumps on her arms. What did you do? I was curious. As a teacher, I had seen children with different learning abilities. Some who couldn't read English but could solve math problems that stumped older kids. Some who struggled with writing but could remember entire conversations word for word. Rosa continued folding, her hands moving automatically while she talked. So I started small. I would say hello in Tagalog when he came for snack time. Kumusta. Within a week, he was saying it back, but not just the sound. He understood it meant greeting someone. He would say it when his father came home from work. Rachel's mind was spinning. But how did it become 9 languages? That's the amazing part, Rosa said, her voice getting excited. My husband is Italian. He was born in Rome but moved to the Philippines for work, which is how we met. When he calls me, we sometimes speak Italian together because it's romantic for us. She laughed softly. Your son started picking up Italian words just from hearing half of our phone conversations. Then my neighbor, Mrs. Liu, she babysits her granddaughter sometimes when I'm working. The little girl speaks Mandarin with her grandmother. Your son would sit by the window and listen to them playing in their backyard. Rachel was starting to understand. Her son wasn't just learning languages from Rosa. He was absorbing them from the environment around him, like a sponge. But it's not just mimicking, Rosa continued. That's what makes it so special. He understands context. When I say salamat, which means thank you in Tagalog, he doesn't just repeat it. He says it when appropriate moments happen. When I hand him his juice, when I help him find a toy. Rosa got up and walked to a small bag in the corner of the laundry room. She pulled out her phone. I hope you don't mind, but I started recording some of our sessions. I wanted to track his progress, like I used to do with my university students. She showed Rachel a video from 2 weeks ago. In it, her son was sitting at the kitchen table with Rosa, and they were looking at picture cards. Rosa would show a card and say something in Spanish. Her son would respond, not just with the Spanish word, but with a complete sentence. He's not just learning vocabulary, Rosa explained. He's learning grammar structures, cultural context, even emotions. Watch this. In the next video, Rosa looked sad and said something in Italian. Her son immediately came over and patted her shoulder, responding in the same language with what sounded like comfort words. He told me not to be sad in Italian and then asked if I missed my family, Rosa translated. How does an 8-year-old understand that concept across language barriers? Rachel felt overwhelmed. All this time she had been taking her son to specialists who measured his progress in single words and basic requests. Meanwhile, he was developing complex communication skills in languages she didn't even know existed. Rosa, you said 9 dialects. What are they all? Rosa counted on her fingers. Tagalog and Cebuano from the Philippines, Spanish from Mexico, and Argentina. He can tell the difference between accents. Italian from my husband, Portuguese from our neighbors who moved away last month, Mandarin and Cantonese from Mrs. Liu and her family, Hindi from the grocery store owner who talks to his children, and Arabic from the family at the playground who we see on weekends. Rachel stared at her. He learned Arabic from overhearing conversations at the playground? Not just overhearing. He approaches learning differently than typical children. He doesn't need formal lessons or repetition drills. He absorbs patterns. He hears how emotions change voices, how respect changes word choices, how love changes tone. Rosa showed her another video. Her son was playing with blocks while Rosa talked on the phone with someone. Even while focused on his building, he was quietly repeating phrases from Rosa's conversation, testing different pronunciations under his breath. He practices constantly, but not like homework, like music, like he's composing with sounds. Rachel watched her son in the video, seeing him with completely new eyes. She had thought his quiet mumbling was just stimming behavior, something many autistic children do to self-regulate. Instead, he had been practicing languages. The most incredible part, Rosa said, is that learning multiple languages seems to be helping his English too. He's making connections between how different languages express the same ideas. It's like each new language gives him more tools to communicate his thoughts. Rachel thought about the previous evening. After Rosa had left, her son had tried to tell her about his day. Instead of his usual frustrated gestures when he couldn't find the right English words, he had switched to Spanish, then Italian, then back to English. Somehow, using multiple languages had helped him express a complete idea. "Rosa," Rachel said slowly, "do you think we've been approaching his development all wrong?" Rosa was quiet for a moment. "I think he's been trying to show us who he really is. We just needed to give him the right tools to do it." Rachel thought sharing this incredible discovery with her family would be the easy part. She was wrong. The first person she called was her ex-husband, David. They had divorced 2 years ago, but they still shared custody of their son. She figured he deserved to know about this amazing breakthrough. "David, you're not going to believe what happened," she said excitedly into the phone. "Our son is speaking multiple languages, real conversations, not just copying sounds." There was silence. On the other end of the line, "What do you mean multiple languages?" David's voice was sharp, the tone he used in courtrooms when he was about to tear apart a witness. Rachel explained everything. Rosa's background, the 3 months of secret language learning, the videos, the obvious joy and confidence their son was showing. She expected David to be as amazed as she was. Instead, he was furious. "Are you telling me that our housekeeper has been experimenting on our son without our permission? Rachel, this is exactly the kind of impulsive decision-making that caused problems in our marriage." Rachel felt like she'd been slapped. "This isn't impulsive, David. This is incredible. Our son is communicating in ways we never thought possible." "He's autistic, Rachel. The doctors have been very clear about realistic expectations. This housekeeper is filling his head with confusion and setting him up for failure. What happens when he goes to school and tries to speak Chinese to his teacher? But you should see how happy he is when he's talking to Rosa. He's confident, he's engaged, he's being manipulated," David interrupted. "I'm calling Dr. Peterson tomorrow. This needs to stop before it causes real damage." After David hung up, Rachel sat in her car outside the coffee shop where she'd been when she made the call. She felt like the wind had been knocked out of her. Her phone buzzed with a text from her mother. "Bringing dinner tonight, can't wait to see my grandson." Maybe her mom would understand. Rachel's mother had always been supportive, always willing to try new approaches to help her grandson. But when Rachel's mother arrived that evening and watched a video of her grandson switching between languages, her reaction wasn't what Rachel expected. "Honey, are you sure this is healthy?" her mother asked, setting down the takeout containers. "It seems like a lot of pressure for a little boy who already struggles with communication." "Mom, he doesn't look pressured. He looks happy." "But what? About his English? Shouldn't we focus on helping him master one language before confusing him with others? And this housekeeper, what do we really know about her teaching methods?" Rachel felt a familiar frustration building. Rosa was a university professor. She taught linguistics for 15 years. "In the Philippines," her mother said gently, "their educational standards might be different. And she's working as a housekeeper now, which makes you wonder what? If she's really qualified to be teaching your son, or if she's taking advantage of your kindness. You pay her well, and now she's positioning herself as some kind of specialist. It's convenient for her." Rachel's heart sank. She hadn't considered that others might see Rosa's help as opportunistic, rather than genuine care. The next morning, Rachel got a call from Dr. Peterson, their son's speech therapist for the past 3 years. "Mrs. Chen," your ex-husband expressed, "some concerns about changes in your son's routine. I'd like to schedule an emergency evaluation." "Dr. Peterson, the changes are positive. He's communicating more than ever." "Mrs. Chen, I understand your excitement, but multilingual exposure can be overwhelming for children on the autism spectrum. We've worked hard to establish English communication patterns. Introducing multiple languages simultaneously can cause regression and confusion. But he's not confused. He's thriving. Dr. Peterson's voice was patient, but firm. What you're seeing might look like progress, but it could be echolalia, repetitive speech that seems meaningful but isn't true communication. Children with autism often excel at mimicking sounds without understanding meaning. This isn't mimicking. He's having real conversations. I'd like to see him this week. We need to assess whether this multilingual exposure is helping or hindering his development. Sometimes parents see improvement where professionals see concerning behaviors. After the call, Rachel felt completely alone. The people who were supposed to support her son's development were treating his breakthrough like a problem to be solved. At work, things weren't better. During lunch with her business partner Jennifer, Rachel shared what had been happening at home. "That's amazing that he's picking up languages," Jennifer said. "But Rachel, you need to be careful. Are you sure this housekeeper isn't taking advantage of the situation?" "What do you mean?" "Think about it. She works for a millionaire, discovers the kid has some kind of special ability, and suddenly she's irreplaceable. It's smart business on her part." Rachel stared at her friend. "You think Rosa is manipulating us?" "I think Rosa probably cares about your son, but I also think she's human. If positioning herself as his special teacher means job security and maybe a raise, that's pretty tempting for someone in her situation." That evening, Rachel's sister called. "Mom told me about the language thing," Lisa said. "I looked it up online. There are lots of articles about scammers who target wealthy families by claiming their kids have special gifts. They offer private lessons, charge huge fees, make all kinds of promises. Rosa hasn't asked for any money yet. But think about it, Rachel. If this is real, why didn't any of his actual doctors notice it? You've spent thousands on specialists, therapists, evaluations. Are you telling me they all missed this huge talent, but the housekeeper spotted it?" Rachel felt doubt creeping in for the first time. "Maybe," Lisa continued, "this is just wishful thinking. You want so badly for him to be normal that you're seeing progress where there isn't any real change." That night, Rachel lay awake thinking about all the conversations she'd had. Everyone she trusted was telling her the same thing. She was being naive. Rosa was taking advantage. Her son wasn't really communicating in multiple languages. He was just mimicking sounds. But then she remembered the look on his face when he sang that multilingual song. The way he had comforted Rosa in Italian when she seemed sad. The excitement in his eyes when he switched between languages to explain something complex. The next morning, she found a note from Rosa on the kitchen counter. "Mrs. Chen, I heard you on the phone with the doctor yesterday. I understand if you want me to stop the language sessions. I don't want to cause problems for you or your son. I just want what's best for him. If the experts think this is wrong, maybe I should just focus on cleaning and stay out of his education." Rachel stared at the note. Rosa was backing down, probably scared of losing her job. Everyone was telling Rachel to be practical, to listen, to the professionals, to stop this experiment before it caused damage. But as she read the note, she heard familiar sounds from the living room. Her son was quietly singing his multilingual song while building with blocks. The same song that had brought tears to her eyes just days ago. She walked to the living room and watched him. He wasn't performing for anyone. He wasn't trying to impress anyone. He was just expressing himself in the way that felt natural to him, and Rachel realized she had a choice to make. Listen to everyone else's fears and doubts, or trust what she was seeing with her own eyes. The question was, did she have the courage to stand up to everyone she cared about to protect something that might be the key to her son's future? Rachel spent the entire weekend wrestling with her decision. Everyone she trusted was telling her to stop the language sessions. The professionals, her family, even her closest friends thought she was making a mistake. But every time she watched, her son happily chatting with Rosa in multiple languages, something inside her rebelled against all that advice. Monday morning, she made a decision that surprised even herself. Instead of calling Dr. Peterson to schedule that evaluation, she started researching other specialists. ones who might have different perspectives. After hours of searching online, she found Dr. Sofia Martinez, a developmental specialist who had written papers about multilingual development in neurodivergent children. Her office was 2 hours away, but Rachel didn't care. She needed someone who might actually understand what she was seeing. Getting an appointment wasn't easy. Dr. Martinez was booked for months, but when Rachel explained the situation to the receptionist, mentioning the 9 languages and the rapid progress, Dr. Martinez made time to see them that same week. "Something about your son's case intrigued me," Dr. Martinez explained when they arrived at her office. "Most children on the autism spectrum struggle with language complexity, but occasionally we see the opposite. Their brains process linguistic patterns in extraordinary ways." Rachel felt a flutter of hope. Finally, someone who didn't immediately dismiss what was happening. Dr. Martinez spent 3 hours with Rachel's son. Unlike other evaluations Rachel had sat through, this one felt different. Instead of testing what he couldn't do, Dr. Martinez seemed genuinely curious about what he could do. She brought in Rosa, asking her to demonstrate the language sessions. She recorded conversations, took notes on his switching patterns, and observed how he used different languages to express different types of thoughts. "This is remarkable," Dr. Martinez said halfway through the evaluation. "He's not just memorizing phrases, he's understanding the cultural context behind different languages. Watch this." She spoke to him in Spanish using a formal tone, the kind you'd use with a teacher or boss. He responded formally. Then she switched to casual Spanish like talking to a friend. His response immediately became more relaxed and playful. "He understands social registers," Dr. Martinez explained to Rachel. "That's advanced language processing that most typically developing children don't master until much later." But the real breakthrough came when Dr. Martinez presented him with a problem. She gave him a complex puzzle but explained the instructions in English, which he struggled to follow. Then Rosa explained the same instructions in a mix of the languages he knew best. Suddenly, his face lit up with understanding. He solved the puzzle quickly and then explained his solution back to them, switching between languages to express different parts of his thinking process. "His brain is using multiple language systems to process information," Dr. Martinez told Rachel privately. "Instead of being confused by multiple languages, he's using them as tools to think more clearly." She showed Rachel brain imaging studies from other multilingual children with autism. Traditional thinking says we should simplify language input for autistic children. But some research suggests that certain autistic brains actually thrive on linguistic complexity. "Your son appears to be one of these children." Rachel felt vindicated but also scared. "So what does this mean? Was I wrong to listen to everyone else's concerns?" "You were right to seek multiple opinions," Dr. Martinez said. "But you were also right to trust what you were observing at home. Let me ask you something. Since he started these language sessions, have you noticed improvements in other areas?" Rachel thought about it. "Actually, yes. He's been more patient with changes in routine. Last week, when we had to take a different route to school because of construction, he didn't have a meltdown. He just asked me why we were going a different way. And his English? Better than ever. He's using more complex sentences, asking more questions. Yesterday, he told me a story about something that happened at school. A whole story, with beginning, middle, and end." Dr. Martinez nodded. "Multilingual development often enhances overall communication skills. His brain is building more neural pathways for language processing." She pulled up another case study on her computer. This is a 12-year-old girl with autism who speaks 6 languages. Her parents were told to stop multilingual exposure when she was 7. They ignored that advice. Now she's not only fluent in multiple languages, but her social communication has improved dramatically across all languages. Rachel stared at the screen. "What happened to the families who did stop?" Dr. Martinez's expression grew serious. "Some children regressed. When you take away a learning method that works for an autistic child's specific brain, you can actually cause setbacks." The weight of that statement hit Rachel hard. She had almost made a decision that could have hurt her son's progress. "Dr. Martinez, why don't more professionals know about this?" "Because it's relatively rare, and it goes against conventional wisdom. Most autism research focuses on deficits and limitations. Research into autistic strengths and unique abilities gets less funding and attention. She handed Rachel a thick folder of research papers. I want you to take this to Dr. Peterson and your ex-husband. Show them the evidence. Sometimes professionals need to see peer-reviewed research before they'll consider changing their recommendations. That evening, Rachel called David and asked him to come over. She needed to show him what she'd learned. David arrived skeptical, but Dr. Martinez had given Rachel a video recording of their son's evaluation. As David watched his son solve complex problems by switching between languages, his expression slowly changed. "He's really understanding all of this?" David asked quietly. "More than understanding. He's thinking in multiple languages. Dr. Martinez says his brain is using each language as a different tool for processing information." David watched the video again. Why didn't Dr. Peterson see this? Because Dr. Peterson was looking for problems to fix, not strengths to develop. They sat in silence for a while, watching their son on the screen confidently explaining his problem-solving process in a mixture of Spanish, Italian, and English. "I owe you an apology," David said finally. "And I owe Rosa an apology too. I was so focused on protecting him from confusion that I almost protected him from his own gift." The next day, Rachel called Dr. Peterson and asked for a meeting. She brought the research, the evaluation video, and Dr. Martinez's written report. Dr. Peterson reviewed everything carefully. Rachel could see him struggling with information that challenged his training and experience. "This is unusual," he admitted. "I've never seen multilingual development benefit an autistic child this significantly. Will you work with Rosa to support his language development instead of trying to stop it?" Dr. Peterson was quiet for a long moment. "Mrs. Chen, I've been doing this for 20 years. I'm used to being the expert in the room. But watching this video, seeing these evaluation results, your son is teaching me something new." He looked up at Rachel. "I'd like to collaborate with Dr. Martinez and Rosa to develop a support plan that builds on his multilingual strengths instead of fighting against them." That night, Rachel found Rosa in the kitchen, quietly preparing dinner. Rosa had been subdued, all week sticking to housework and avoiding the language sessions. "Rosa," Rachel said, "I have something to tell you." Rosa looked up nervously. "You were right. About everything. His gift, his learning style, his potential. I'm sorry I let other people's fears make me doubt what we were both seeing." Rosa's eyes filled with tears. "Mrs. Chen, I just want him to have every opportunity to show the world how smart he is." "That's exactly what we're going to do," Rachel said. "Dr. Martinez wants to work with you to develop a formal program, and Dr. Peterson is willing to learn new approaches." For the first time in weeks, Rosa smiled. "So we can continue the language sessions?" "We can do more than continue them. We're going to show everyone what's possible when we believe in a child's strengths instead of focusing only on their challenges." As if on cue, Rachel's son appeared in the kitchen doorway and launched into an excited story about his day at school. He used English for the basic facts, Spanish for the emotional parts, and Italian for the funny details. Rachel and Rosa looked at each other and smiled. They had fought for this moment, and it was worth every battle. 6 months later, Rachel barely recognized her life. What had started as an accidental discovery in her kitchen had grown into something she never could have imagined. Her son was thriving in ways that amazed everyone who knew him. The quiet, withdrawn child who used to struggle with basic conversations was now confidently chatting with neighbors in their native languages and helping other kids at school when they felt left out because of language barriers. Last week, Rachel had watched him comfort a new student from Brazil who was crying because no one understood her Portuguese. Her son had walked over, introduced himself in perfect Portuguese, and spent recess teaching the girl some English words while learning about her favorite games in her home country. But the real transformation started when Rosa suggested something that seemed crazy at first. "Mrs. Chen," Rosa had said one afternoon, "what if we shared what we've learned with other families? Your son's progress is incredible, but I keep thinking about all the other children who might have similar gifts that no one has discovered yet." The idea seemed overwhelming. Rachel was still getting used to her new reality, let alone thinking about helping other families. But then she remembered how isolated and hopeless she had felt before this discovery. "What did you have in mind?" Rachel had asked. Rosa's eyes lit up. "Maybe we could make some videos. Show other parents what to look for. I've been thinking about my old students back home. Some of them had learning differences, and I wonder now if I missed signs of language. Gifts like your son's." That conversation led to their first YouTube video. Rachel had expected maybe a few dozen views from curious parents. Instead, the video exploded. Within a week, they had thousands of views and hundreds of comments from parents around the world. "My daughter does this humming thing I thought was just stimming. But after watching your video, I realized she's copying the rhythm of different languages she hears on TV. We live in a multilingual neighborhood and my autistic son always seems fascinated by conversations he overhears. I never thought it might be more than curiosity. My child's speech therapist told us to only speak English at home, but your story makes me want to try our native language again." The comments kept coming. Parents sharing their own discoveries, asking for advice, describing behaviors they had never thought to mention to doctors. Rachel found herself spending hours responding to messages, connecting families with resources, and talking to parents who felt as lost as she had felt months ago. Then something unexpected happened. Dr. Martinez called with an opportunity that would change everything. "Rachel, I've been following your YouTube channel. The response has been incredible. I want to propose something to you." Dr. Martinez explained that she had been trying for years to get funding for research into multilingual development in neurodivergent children. But with the attention Rachel's story was getting, suddenly universities and foundations were interested. "Would you and Rosa consider partnering with us on a formal research study? We could document your son's continued progress while developing protocols to help other families identify and nurture similar abilities." The research partnership opened doors Rachel had never imagined. She found herself speaking at conferences, consulting with other specialists, and meeting families from around the world who were discovering their own children's hidden language gifts. But the most rewarding part was watching Rosa step back into the role she was meant for. The research team hired her as their lead multilingual development specialist. She was designing curriculum, training other therapists, and finally using her linguistics degree in America. "I never thought I'd teach again," Rosa told Rachel one day as they prepared for a presentation to a group of speech therapists. "When I came to this country, I thought that part of my life was over." "Sometimes the best opportunities come from the most unexpected places," Rachel replied, thinking about how finding Rosa in her kitchen had changed both their lives. The presentation went better than they hoped. Instead of skepticism, they found eager curiosity. Therapists wanted to learn new approaches. Parents left with hope instead of limitations. After the presentation, an older therapist approached them. 30 years ago, I had a student who showed signs similar to what you're describing. But back then, we didn't have the knowledge or tools you have now. We focused on fixing what we saw as problems instead of nurturing what might have been gifts." She paused, looking emotional. "I've wondered for decades what happened to that child, whether we failed him by not seeing his potential. Thank you for showing us a different way." That conversation stuck with Rachel. How many children had been limited by well-meaning professionals who simply didn't know what to look for? How many families had been told to lower their expectations when they should have been encouraged to explore new possibilities? The YouTube channel kept growing. They started getting messages from teenagers and adults who recognized themselves in the stories being shared. "I'm 22 and just realized I've been suppressing my language abilities my whole life because teachers told my parents it was confusing me. Watching your videos helped me understand why I've always felt more comfortable expressing emotions in my grandmother's language than in English. I'm a parent now and I'm determined not to make the same mistakes with my daughter that my parents made with me." These messages reminded Rachel that their work was about more than just her son. It was about changing how society viewed neurodivergent minds and their unique capabilities. The breakthrough moment came when her son was invited to present at a linguistics conference. Rachel was nervous about putting him in front of academics and researchers, but he was excited about the opportunity. The presentation was simple. He demonstrated how he used different languages to express different types of thoughts, showed how multilingual processing helped him solve problems, and answered questions from the audience in whatever language felt most natural for each response. The room was silent when he finished. Then one professor stood up and started clapping. Soon the entire audience was on their feet. "In 30 years of studying language acquisition," the professor said, "I have never seen such a clear demonstration of the brain's capacity for linguistic creativity and adaptation." After the conference, Rachel received calls from universities wanting to study her son's development. Publishers wanted to document their story. International schools asked for advice on multilingual programs for neurodivergent students. But the most meaningful moment came a few weeks later, at their local grocery store. They ran into Dr. Peterson, who had become one of their strongest supporters. After seeing the research results, "How's our multilingual genius doing?" Dr. Peterson asked with a smile. Rachel's son grinned and launched into a story about his latest language discovery. He had been helping a new family at school who spoke a dialect he didn't know yet, so he was learning it from their grandmother who visited the playground. "I want to learn every language in the world," he told Dr. Peterson confidently. "That way I can talk to anyone and help them feel at home." Dr. Peterson looked at Rachel with amazement. "Remember when our biggest goal was getting him to ask for help in English?" Rachel laughed. "Funny how our expectations change when we start believing in possibilities instead of limitations." As they walked home, Rachel thought about the journey that had brought them here. A chance discovery, a decision to trust her instincts over expert opinions, and the courage to share their story with the world. Her son was chattering happily in a mixture of languages as he pointed out interesting things they passed. Rosa was officially part of their family now, not just as an employee, but as the person who had unlocked her son's potential. Most importantly, they had learned that sometimes the most profound gifts come disguised as challenges, and the most life-changing discoveries happen when we least expect them. The little boy who had struggled to say hello in English was now dreaming of learning every language in the world, and Rachel knew that with the right support, there was no limit to what he might achieve.